Hello, I'm Penelope Mavor, and welcome to Earth Converse podcast, where we explore our relationship and conversations with the earth, all in the hope of inspiring a deeper connection with ourselves, each other, and the earth that is our home. And today, I've got Pauline Scanlon here. We met at a Healing Early Imprints workshop in the wilds of Scotland 5 years ago, and we were buddies, and we've stayed buddies. We've stayed together. And what really struck me about Pauline is her dedication to her own healing and inquisitiveness. She's an engineer by trade, and so she's got this real intellect and curiosity that leads her down different paths. And she's done every, I don't know, therapy. I'm not too sure really what she hasn't done. And she's going to talk about her journey. We're just going to sort of, as we always do, go with the flow. But there's something really I want her to talk about is the system of natural life. And she's really dedicated 20 years or more around this system. I don't know if you know it or not. And one of my favorite Paulinisms, get this, is a mosquito is nature's acupuncture. That is a reframing of a mosquito, is it not? Okay, welcome, dear.
Yes.
Do you remember telling me that?
Yes. Mosquitoes do. They see in infrared. And this is, again, a gem that I got from my teacher from the System of Natural Life, which is that, when you get a mosquito bite, because mosquitoes, they are all part of nature, and they see in infrared. When they look at our bodies, they see all the heat spots in it, and they go in and do you an acupuncture point there. So they're very accurate, very spot on. Mm-hmm. The only thing is that they do leave behind a little bit of nastiness, which is where the itchiness and everything else comes from. Mm-hmm. So they are, in fact, these beautiful devices where you can suck that out. You don't have to scratch yourself to death. You don't have to put creams on, but you can co-create or with the mosquito if you have one of these anti-venom suckers.
I've got them upstairs. In fact, I gave them as gifts.
Yep, they're brilliant, aren't they? Absolutely brilliant. So you just, as soon as, you'll feel it. But you can appreciate the mosquito for the work it's done for you, for us, for everyone. And then say, thank you very much, but I don't want what you've left behind. And suck it out and off it goes.
Now, we'll go into System of Natural Life first start, and then we'll maybe work backwards and why you're there. But tell us about it.
Well, it is, as it says on the can, really, it is the System of Natural Life. It follows the rhythms of life that we all have, that each hemisphere has. You look outside of you and it's a reflection. So it teaches us to become the observer of nature so that we can integrate more with it. And, one of the principles is that nature is perfect. And I used to say, even though I don't know why, because of my intellectual curiosity and wanting to know. But now, recently, I've even dropped that. I don't need to understand. I don't have to know everything that there is to know about everything, other than to know and accept that whatever is happening is totally and completely, utterly perfect. It's within a divine plan, within nature. It's within everything. It's for everything, for my very best. Nature gives nothing less than the best. Always, every single moment of every time.
Totally agree. And also, we can't know everything. That's like, it's like there's so much magic out there. Yes. Unknown. To even claim that we would want to know is just,
because we are very, very, very little in the bigger scheme of things, very tiny. And now, for the first time, I've understood why my mother called me Pauline. Yeah, because we are very, very, very little. For the first 10 days of my life, I was called Carol-Ann. And she said it was too much of a mouthful. She couldn't do it. And she changed my name to Pauline. And of course, it means small, the little things. And now I understand more than ever, the little things in life mean absolutely everything. Yeah.
From the little, yeah. Well, that's from, you know, from a science point of view, the atoms are the smallest molecules, or
Yeah.
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 Well, the atom is the smallest molecule.
I think the smallest measurable thing is something called a Planck, but we won't go there because that really is only because you can't, it's measurable and it's a scientific thing. Max Planck was one of the physicists that, look him up on Google. Everything is Googled these days.
Well, yeah. Actually, on that, I like the idea that actually science is only a part of it, and there's a real, I don't think there's increasing, you know, like dedication to science, or you know, like
Yes,
listen to the scientists, but also science is just not the only thing, and there's a
absolutely not. And one of the great things of the system of natural life is that nature has always existed. Nature is there all of the time, and it is science that is moving toward nature, not the other way around. So science is evolving, and it's like it's the curiosity of life, science. And you know, I'm speaking as a Bachelor of Science. I'm speaking as someone who has spent a considerable amount of time delving into the science of everything. And what I can say about it is that it's limited, whereas nature is not. There's a limitation within the bounds of science, and partly what you seek is what you shall find.
Yes.
So when you put parameters out there, even if you don't know the answer, you'll end up finding the answer. So, you know, it's about the manifestations of the mind and the capabilities of the mind to produce what it is that we're looking for. So
yeah, delve in a little bit more about the system.
Well, it is in many ways it's a return to who we are as human beings. You know, we are the most intelligent species on the planet. We are at the top of the food chain, if you like, in so many ways, because we have the capacity to choose and to discern, make discernments and make judgments in a way. And one of the things that I've discovered is that being a plant-based system, which we start with the physical dimension because that's the most dense part of our body, and starting with the food, there's a whole realm of yes foods and no foods. And in that way, when you eat yes foods, automatically you discard no foods. So there you are making a judgment, and you start right at the very beginning with your physical body and put that back in order. And because it's plant-based, it makes one much more stable. Think about a plant, a tree. It's rooted in the ground. It doesn't move. It can flex and go with the wind and go with everything else. But it's very rooted in its own being, in its own self, really, and moves as part of nature. So to start off with, it's yes foods and no foods. And, you know, there's a list of foods, the grains, the legumes, vegetables, lots of plant-based foods. But there are some exclusions to that, specifically for the energy associated with those particular foods, like the nightshades, for instance, and walnuts and peaches. And you know, walnuts, if you look at a walnut tree, underneath a walnut tree, nothing else grows. So it has this capacity to get rid of everything in sight. So if that's what you want, you don't want anyone to come close to you, eat plenty of walnuts, which is, we are not really, as human beings, built that way. So there's a whole rationale and reason and logic behind the system of natural life, very well thought through, and its founder, Michelangelo Chieccha, got to a point in life when at the age of 21 or so, he was given 3 months to live. So, and then I think he got a little bit annoyed after sort of coping with the information that he'd been given, and decided, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die my way. And that was at 21, and I think he's 60 something this year coming. And his research based on personal experiences is what created the system of natural life. And again, like life, it's evolving, it's growing. When new information comes in, we adapt. But there is a steadfastness sticking to the yes foods and the no foods.
What's the story of the Nightshades? I was really struck when you told me first about the Nightshades and why there are no food.
Well, I'm only repeating what I'm being told, and I can give some examples. That the nightshades, the tomatoes, potatoes, aubergines, chilies, kumquats, and a number of other tobacco, these have an adverse effect on the liver. So the liver engorges. It has to grow bigger in order to accommodate and digest them. So in fact, they give you less energy, and it costs your body an awful lot to assimilate these, and therefore, they have a detrimental effect on the body. And in fact, I'm told that there is a condition called liver napolitane, which is from the Naples region, where they have loads and loads of tomatoes. And tomatoes were not ever native to Europe. They came via the Incas. They were known as the Incas' revenge. In nature, she has a traffic light system, just like we have in our traffic control systems around the roads. And, anything red in nature usually indicates there's a warning there as well. So you have to kind of be a little bit careful and, study a little bit more. Don't take things at face value. So, yeah, that's the story of the tomatoes, that they engorge the liver. And I remember after some time of not eating tomatoes and peppers and that, somebody gave me a tiny, tiny little garnish. They got stuck on a little bit of food, and my lips completely, they swelled up. There was a hystemic reaction. And wow, that was that. I went, so if you don't have to believe it, you just have to, like, for instance, people who smoke, when you stop smoking, you will understand why you've been smoking. So my experience on my own body through not eating tomatoes for quite some time and then having, my body reacted, and I paid plenty of attention to the body that said, okay, no more, that's it. I also had a very dear friend. She started the system probably around about the same time as me. And there was this hue over her. She loved aubergines and she loved the nightshades and everything. And until you can see it, she had this kind of grey blackish hue to her skin colour. After 6 months, her skin was brighter, lighter, and you could see the difference. And her demeanour was lifted as well. So I can only speak of my experiences, and nothing would want me to eat, not even curiosity would want me to eat a tomato, aubergine, potato or anything. I found so many other alternatives that are super delicious and I love them.
Yeah, you're great at it. Bring up a thing. So yeah, it's completely plant-based, no caffeine, no sugar,
no dairy, no honey. Yeah, pretty much. No walnuts, no peaches, no nectarines, some exotic fruits, always looking for what's around in the local and in season. For instance, we've just had a beautiful glut of Brussels sprouts because, seasonally, this is the time of year when they're all coming to pass. And so just eat with the rhythms of nature, what nature provides for us. And nature provides for us in order to prepare us for the next season, for instance, back in September, October time is grape season. So jolly good idea to eat plenty of grapes. And if you look at grapes, they even look like the alveoli of the lungs. So therefore it prepares the lungs to do their job through the next season. And, these kinds of connections are extraordinary, really. They're obvious. They're right in front of you. You can see, once you know what the alveoli of a lungs look like, you can see, oh yes, the grapes. God, I didn't know that.
It's interesting, isn't it? I suppose being the discerning observer, isn't it?
Yes.
Sort of like noticing that and then going beyond that, beyond the
beyond the story,
about going behind taboos, or
yes,
Ray will talk about the different consensual reality as opposed to other diverse
yes
realities. But it's really interesting. It's a nice thing.
And if you get another story that helps you understand where you are right now, and it makes more sense to you, then that's the story to go with. Because our lives are made up of stories. I mean, I can tell you the story of the maple tree, for instance. Why maple syrup is so much better for you than any other kinds of sweetener. Because the maple tree, when it grows, it will take 40 years before it will give off its sap just at the very beginning. So that's the point. So there's 40 years of maturation built into the maple syrup. And that's just the beginning. And that's a very young sapling of a maple tree. So you've got this slow, precise energy that is contained within the maple syrup. And it's beautifully sweet, and I love it. That, compared to sugarcane, which is very spiky, because, all you have to do is watch your children after they've eaten a bit too much sugar and how much hyperactivity that's going on. And, there you can get a crop of sugarcane, and it will huge, fantastically high, spring up 3-4 crops a year. So that's the energy. There's the energy of sugar compared to maple syrup, which is languishing and slow and just, been moving around a little bit and growing its trunk, and eventually will give off its sap. So there's a complete contrast between one or the other. And if we have been inundated, and our bodies have been inundated with spike, to redress the balance, maple syrup is phenomenal. It's great. So it's all about redressing the balance.
So I actually don't think I've asked you this about, like, in terms of the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. Have you got a view on that?
Ooh. Well, I do have a view on it. I have experiences in the past that have been very painful for me, where I have gone into hospital after my son was born, and I was in a particular ward where I was had trouble sleeping, had a lot of trouble sleeping. I was very agitated about a lot of things going on in my life. And one of the reasons I was there was for observation, funnily enough. And during that time, after about 3 or 4 days, I did manage to rest and get some sleep. And one time I'd gone to bed about 7 o'clock in the evening, and around about 11 o'clock, I was woken up, and this male nurse had an injection ready for me. And there I was, very drowsy, and said, "What's this for?" And he said, "Oh, it's to help you sleep." And nobody had said anything to me about it. Nobody had even said that some kind of medication was coming my way. There was no consultation, no nothing, just this young male nurse, 11 o'clock past his night shift, came to me and woke me up and was wanting to give me, and I said, no, thank you.
The irony of that. I'll wake you up to help you, make you help.
And I couldn't believe what I was being told, you know, and so I said, no, thank you. And if you like, an argument, a situation grew because, you know, are you refusing? And I said, well, you've woken me up. It doesn't make any sense to me. Nobody said anything to me about it. So I don't know what's inside it. I don't know. And this is, I'm using the correlation with this COVID-19. So it's the same story as far as I'm concerned. And it is that I was violated terribly that night with 5 people holding me down and pushing this injection into me in a very inhumane way. That one injection at that time, and previously I had a phobia about having needles come to me. I am not having anyone put anything into me. It was a incredibly disturbing time in my life, and I was in a place where they were supposed to care for me, and this was how they thought they were caring for me. They violated all of their own oaths. They didn't get 2 doctors at 1 o'clock in the morning to come and covered up with all the paperwork afterwards. And, you know, that experience has stayed with me. It struck me in many, many different ways. And it made me very untrusting. And now through the system of natural life, I trust life. And when life has its way, life will. And you can know life through death, and you can, you know, it's all a question of putting things into proportion. And maybe it was completely exaggerated, everything that happened there, but it was for a nonsensical reason. It didn't make any sense to me. At the moment, the COVID situation doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm one of these people who will say, no, thank you. And I'd rather not know. I don't want to hear the arguments for or against. I know from my inner knowing, no, thank you. That's really, I don't want to have any big discussion. It's very simple. Thank you. I appreciate the offer, but no, thank you.
And I think it goes back to like where you see what you want to see. There's sort of like in terms of that the evidence for or against as we see what we want to see.
Yeah.
And so in many respects, it doesn't matter, but what is your own truth? And I think I think the health system ignores people's intuition. We all give away our authority to the professionals or the doctors and put them on a bit of a pedestal, but they have some, you know, they have obviously wisdom and studied wisdom and keeping up to date, but we hold our own wisdom. It's an adult.
And for me, the answer is no, thank you. And I don't want to have to fight for my rights. This isn't about fighting. This is about me wanting to live in harmony with myself. And I don't want other people to impose their ideas and wishes upon me the way in which it has done in the past. So you know, the mind is a very, very clever entity, super, super clever. And if you go to look for something, you will find the answer that supports whatever it is your belief system or your position in life. So in a way, I don't trust words. I used to love words because they're so beautiful. There was a nuance to everything. But when the energy behind the words, it's like the Native Americans from when I grew up watching, you know, cowboys and Indians on the television as Sunday movies, white man, forked tongue, you know, so they will say something, but do something else. So there's incongruence. When I see something that is incongruent, no, thank you is my answer. Very simple. Incongruent, no, thank you. Without integrity, I'm not even going to question it. I just know inside of me. And my engineering background was all in quality assurance. And it was say what you do what you say, and prove it. And the prove it bit was all the paper trail. I've dropped the prove it bit It's, and their actions and words integrated are phenomenal. They are magic, and they bring a focus and a clarity to everything that a person does. So be your own integrity. And the plant-based system, it will bring out, you will eradicate the notion that anything you've eaten is the cause of some kind of bodily reaction. So they're all very simple foods, and from there, any reaction that comes is a cleaning and a healing process.
Ah, nice. So what have you noticed in your own
wow. What have I noticed?
Observed.
Well, I'm more at ease with myself than I ever have been in my entire life. I also recognize that things that have happened to me in the past, the being diagnosed with an incurable illness, has allowed me to find my own way, find a path that, and to live with something that is incurable, and that it's severe, it's enduring, and I'm careful with myself. I'm more gentle with myself than I've ever been all my life. I look after myself in ways that I would never have even conceived were possible 20 years ago. And I know my vulnerability. I know one is only as strong as their weakest link. And I have a number of weak links within me, and I take care of them very, 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 very well, because without that, you're not here anymore. And I want to stay for a little bit longer.
What is the incurability?
I've no idea. I just know that this is the label.
The system of natural life. Is there such thing in nature that's incurable?
Oh, probably life itself, because it keeps on going and going.
Yeah.
And nature, nature adapts. Nature, there are things that have become extinct. The dodo, there are other things. So there is the possibility of things becoming extinct. Yeah.
What is incurability? It's an interesting word.
It is, isn't it? Perhaps I'm an incurable romantic as well.
How did you go into the system of natural life? What took you there?
Okay, so for more than 10 years after I had this diagnosis, and I had many, many different episodes that were horrific and terrifying, and it was all in and around mental health and my physical health as well. I was looking for something. I didn't know what I was looking for. All I knew was that incongruence. They just didn't feel right. And I've got no idea why or how. And you're right, I did try many, many things. And because things were very helpful, celluloid mineral therapy was quite helpful to me. But we have to put this in context. You've got to know where I was at that point in time. And it helped. So there was a time in my life where I couldn't put my hands to my head and wash my hair. I couldn't coordinate my body to be able to brush my teeth. And I went out, being an engineer, I wanted a solution to the problem. So I bought an electric toothbrush so that I could feel the vibration on my teeth, so that I could know that I was actually brushing my teeth, but I couldn't feel the pressure. There was just, again, I was in this very zone out place. So I have these memories, and I know what that's been like. And from that point, yes, once I started to get a little bit more back on my feet, which, as an emergency, the allopathic medicine stepped in. I'm very grateful at that point in my life. That was what was necessary for me. But it did have its side effects, and I did laying on the couch, zombied out. I put on huge amounts of weight. I lived in a fog for a very, very, very long time. And so once that kind of lifted, I was looking and always searching for something. And I looked at anthroposophical nutrition, the Rudolf Steiner way of looking at life. Thermoauricular therapy, goodness knows, just so many different things. And I'd already done some work with anthroposophical nutrition at Emerson College here in Forest Row, where I live. And it opened my eyes to, again, a different way of living that, you know, lundi, mardi, mercredi, jeudi, vendredi, samedi, dimanche. Each one of them is a planet associated with each day and a grain associated with each of the days of the week. Lundi, for instance, lunadi, Monday is the moon day. And the grain associated with that is rice. Lundi, mardi, Tuesday is the planet is Mars, and the grain is barley, and Wednesday, and it goes on and on. And you know, we even have the rhyme. Monday's child is fairer face, Tuesday's child is full of grace, and so on. So there were connections being made there. And I had explored all of this, and the bit that didn't sit right with me was the curds and wheys and the dairy. And I wasn't even sure why. I can think back as to why now. Yes, I can. And a friend of mine ran a clinic called the Sanctuary of Light, and that was in Norwood in South London. And I went to Fresh and Wild because I was quite into organic produce at that time, and I had studied some nutrition and some acupressure. I just popped in to see her. Okay. In just popping in to see her, she had met Michelangelo the night before and had a reflexology session with him. And she was raving about this guy. She'd never experienced anything like it. And it was just fantastic. So she rang him up to tell him, and she was having this conversation before her clinic had even opened. And I popped in to make an appointment with somebody else in her clinic, because again, I was still exploring many, many different complementary and alternative ways, because allopathy didn't have anything to offer me except pills, pills, and more pills. And even now, you know, I have a respect for all of that. And so she was there raving about, and she said, "Oh, I've got people here. They want to see you too." So she kind of made the decision for me, and I went, "Yeah, all right then." And so the next day I had a reflexology session with him, and it wasn't quite the most painful reflexology session I'd ever had, but I didn't stop laughing. It was so painful. I just kept on laughing and laughing. It was hilarious. It was completely infectious, my laughing, because it was so terribly painful. Yes, I can remember it now. And later, as I started to study more and more with him, I understood that this laughing was a release of the heart, that the heart was under so much pressure, and it was in the middle of summer. And of course, I was much bigger than I am now. And yes, probably, yes, of course, my heart was under a lot of strain and a lot of pressure. So this was it naturally releasing. So laughter is phenomenally good. I love it to pieces. And he said to me at that point, he said, "Well, are you coming to the talk this evening?" I went, "What talk? I don't know anything about talk." I went, "So, yeah, well, I don't know. I'll see. I'll go home." So I went home. And as we sat around the dinner table, I said to my husband and two sons, "What are you doing tonight?" I'm thinking I might like to go and listen to this health lecture. "Really?" they said. Oh, yes, you go. We're going to the squash club. We're going to watch the football. We're going to this, and all obviously stuff that I'm not completely interested in. And they were delighted, completely delighted that, yes, off you go. Oh, all right then. So off I went. And because I'd bought a one-day travel card, it didn't cost me anything to go back up the second time round. So that was super good. And from that point on, there was things that happened there that there was this synchronicity of events that came to pass. I would get to find out that he was in town. There was this other connection that was an unspoken connection that was bringing me back to receive more reflexologies with him, to want to understand what this, to understand what was happening with me. And I had at that point qualified as a nutritionist because I really wanted to delve into, I want to understand what's happened to me. Why has this happened? You know, there was this insatiable appetite that couldn't really be, couldn't be satisfied in any way. And when I first went on his nutrition or his food seminar, he spoke about the energy of the cow's milk, and that cow's milk belongs to cows, and that you know, cows grow from calves to adult cows in 2.5 years, whereas humans, we grow from baby to adult in 25 years. So there's a times 10 factor. Faster, 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 you know. So we're putting into our bodies things that are not suitable to us and asking us to grow quicker than nature intended. So a slowing down process is what's needed. And then on top of that, he described, can you imagine what it's like for the cow who is tied up, restrained, can't move, and she's just given birth to a calf that's going to be taken away and used for veal. So she's desperate, flinging and desperate for looking for her child, for her baby. And I deeply resonated with that. It was the thing that made me sit up and take notice, because of the despair in the past that I had felt over many, many different things. So this desperation drove me, and I didn't even know it was despair that was driving me. I just knew that something wasn't right, and I didn't know what it was that wasn't right. And in many ways, that's what led me for you and I meeting 5 years ago, again, in and around when I was born. What was it that happened to me? And immediately I was never breastfed. So the breast milk that was made by my mother as a human being for me as another human being was never given to me. And so the fad, the science at that time with its formula milk, and me, I became a scientist full of formulas, full of A plus B equals C squared times 3 will equal something else, you know, all of those formulaic things. Yes, they work in a very limited capacity, but they're not the whole picture. They're not the bigger picture. That's why we need to go beyond the stories we are being told. And even science is a story. I remember sitting in a Greek island when my eldest son was moving from, he was in year 5 at primary school. And his next project was going to be Greece and the ancient Greeks. And I remember we were going out looking for turtles on this bay. It was a day out trip when we were on a holiday in Greece. And there was this man, there were no turtles to be seen anywhere, but he made up all these stories about, well, 3 weeks ago, we saw a turtle here. And I was like, there's no turtles. It's simple. There's no turtles. What are we doing? But there was all this flim flam about, because we were out on a trip and he was, you know, we were being charged, and he made it rather entertaining. And that's when the penny dropped for me. Even Einstein's theory of relativity is just another story. Yeah. You know, this is one of the greatest scientists that we have. But for me, this is where I made the transition from hypothesis and theories and very sturdy words over to the more gentle stories, myths, legends, how we behave. And we even have to look beyond that. Because we are humans, we have the capacity to choose for ourselves every single time. We don't have to follow a mythological pattern. We don't have to follow the hero's journey. We can do what is absolutely right for us at the right time, in the right place. And that's all there is to it. Knowing the difference between what's congruent or incongruent, what is right for you, what is not right for you. Very simple.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. I didn't even know I was going to say all this.
So important, because we give it, I've said this before in other respects, is like we give away a personal authority, you know,
Yes.
to the storytellers or to our parents or to our doctors, to our experts, but actually to find our own story and what's real for us. And you know, and but I also love the bracing of the, you know, the hard facts or the data, because, you know, there's facts, there's rocks.
Yes,
facts, and but then also the myth, but beyond the myth and the poetry. Actually, I love when you said about you did world whirling. Yeah. Whirling.
Yes.
I can just imagine actually that loosening up your structure and your control and getting into a different state. Yeah.
And also you can't whirl and without being completely centered within oneself.
Yes, lovely. Yes, finding.
So and they do exercises when you're training or learning to whirl, you know, to look at look at the hand and just whirl around the hand. And there's an entire ceremony involved with whirling. So yeah, I loved whirling, and I still do. I haven't done it for a long time now, but it was a phase in my life, and I loved it very much. And it did teach me huge amounts about being mind and body unified together. And if you look at babies, for instance, they are totally unified with all that they do. If a baby holds onto a rattle and starts shaking it, you try getting, and it's interested in the noise of the rattle, and it's shaking and it's looking at it. You try taking that rattle off of them. They are unified with that rattle, that baby's rattle. And the only way you're going to get it off of them is to distract them. Well, they let go and their focus goes somewhere else. This is a beautiful observation of how we are naturally as human beings. When we are unified, it's the mind that takes us all off in all these different directions. And the chit-chat, the chit-chat in my head, sometimes I was, shall be quiet.
Yeah, or turn to it and go, well, you know, I'm listening, or it's like, it's okay. It's okay. Go and have a cup of tea.
Yes. Cup of tea is the answer to just about everything. These days, my teas are caffeine free. And, you know, I have watched my body, how it has these reactions, these allergic reactions, for want of a better word. So I have, through the experiences, through my life experience, I have an extreme sensitivity to a lot of things. So for that reason, you know, in many ways, one might say I live a very restricted life because of it. But within that restriction, I make the most of everything that's there to be had and to be seen, and to be joyful about, because I know what it's like to be the opposite of it. And I'm very, very grateful for everything in my life, really.
And I see in terms of that sort of restriction, sort of the freedom within the framework, because you give it sort of a freeing of the mind, knowing that what you do is so good for you.
Yes.
And the result that you gain from it in terms of your nervous system, or you're literally your healing.
Yeah. Yes, there's a beautiful Bindegewebe, which it took many years before I could even receive it, before anyone could even touch my skin, which has I can absorb the theory very, very quickly. The practice takes a little bit more coming to me. But when I remember feeling the practitioner's fingers going down my back in a very slow, methodical way. And the instant relief that I experienced, this dropping into my body in a way that I had never dropped into it before. And yeah, I love it. I loved it so much. I went to learn more and more and more about it. It's a particular kind of massage. We all have ideas, again, more stories about what nature is. We all, many people will, when you think of nature, you think of running brooks and streams and rivers and trees and clouds and birds and flowers. This is nature. But every single thing on this planet is all part of nature. We're all, we're spinning at a particular rate. We're in relation to the moon. We're in relation to Mars, Venus, Sun, Saturn, Plato, Uranus, all of them. We are in a cosmic dance. And I have always, since I first encountered the pale blue dot, I love it. I love listening to the pale blue dot and seeing the smallness of the earth and these so-called triumphs, and how we're so fervent about one particular idea and another idea. And this too will pass in the same way. Even as a child, my father took us to County Sligo in Ireland, and there was this huge mountain, Ben Bulben. And he said, I asked, what is this mountain? He said, oh, that mountain has been here long before you were born, and it'll be there long after you're gone. So, being kinder and more kindly to each other and to ourselves is really hugely important. And if there's that message, then I hope people hear it loud and clear. And the gentleness of life, the sweetness in life is there to be seen, but it's there to be touched and felt and just embraced in a way that perhaps we haven't done. And if we're going to have conversations with ourselves, they're the kinds of conversations where we mother and nurture ourselves as if we are our own newborn baby, as if this is the most precious thing in your life that lives within inside of you. We are all one entity together. We just see the separation. And I think it's with words, we can play with them and they can be used for trickery and deception. But we are, each one of us, an integrated part of nature. We are an integral part. We are a part of nature, a part of nature. We are not apart from nature. And they're exactly the same words. They're exactly the same letters all put together, one with a little gap and one without a gap. And the one with the little gap means we're more into it. We're more integrated with nature than being stuck very, looking very limitedly at a part. We're not separate from nature. We are an integral part of it. And every single thing that happens to us is all part of the cosmic learning, the cosmic dance. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's very poetic for a
Isn't it just? And I think that I was saying to you, the last poem I ever wrote was for you when we met a few years ago. And I've got no idea what I wrote. It was private. It was for you. Written by me, and it just came through. Yeah. I'm extraordinarily grateful for having met Michelangelo and for what he has taught me through his life experiences. He has allowed me to honor myself more than I've ever done before and taught me discernment. But it was there inside of me already, waiting to be awoken. And
the thing, I mean, you absolutely turned up at the right time in that moment of that woman saying, you know, inviting him there, and then going to the talk and hearing
yes,
the talk of the cows, you know, and then
ah,
yeah, doesn't it? And then it triggers something in you, and you see that connection,
yeah,
discernment,
yeah.
and
bit by bit over the years, I would say wild horses wouldn't stop me from continuing with what I'm doing. It may seem extraordinarily restrictive, but I get the maximum enjoyment out of life because of it. And that in itself is, you know, very efficient. Mechanically, it's very efficient.
well, you're very disciplined. There's a I want to say, is there a restraint? Because some of your fasting is really, well, for me, I'll say extreme, but for example,
Fasting. So the fastings, when you consciously go about the business of not eating solid food, these fastings are fastings that you can go with all the different tastes and flavors, the sour, bitter, salty, sweet. You know, no, you're not deprived. It's not a water fasting or only one thing. So you can, it's about learning to listen to your body, to get your body to speak to you in the language that's most appropriate for you. And so the fasting, in a way, replicates and recreates the time in which you were born. When you were mother, you had everything you ever wanted, and then no, there's a not mother, so you're into the practical world. So it brings up discernment again, more and more and more discernment, and getting to understand your body when you don't have everything provided for you. What is it that will bring up, and you are loving yourself, and it brings up all that is love is all that is not love. So in this way, the whole fasting experience is an educative one, and it's an inner knowing, it's an inner exploration. It's about recognizing physically we've cut off the physical food, so therefore there's more time, more energy available on the emotional level, on the mental level, and the spiritual level to explore the non-physical entities that we all are. So we are physical and non-physical entities as we're walking around. But when you cut off the physical food, you can explore more deep. You can see it in a different way. So that's the whole process.
Ancient form of going into consciousness, isn't there? You know,
yes,
it's in consciousness, I think.
Yeah. Even the word breakfast is break fast.
Yeah, for sure.
And how to break a fast, how to do it gently, how to do it that totally respects what's going on in the body, that you've stopped eating for 9 days, 10 days, 6 days, 3 days, whatever, you know, however long a person does a fasting for. And yes, I've had to delve quite deeply inside of me to get these levels of recognition and awareness.
So we'll start wrapping up, but there's one question that I do ask people. What do you think is the collective conversation we need to step into?
You know what? I actually think the conversation is silence. It's really extraordinary. I didn't know I'd be saying that, but it's about quietening things down and, you know, using kinder, gentler words and reverential words, you know, that the person in front of you is a divine entity, is sacred and is beautiful. And to have a quiet respect for that. Thank you. It's always such a huge delight.
A little wise one with your wise owl behind you as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I really want to thank you.
And thank you. Thank you for giving me a voice. really, because I know that I stay very quiet for an awful lot of time most of my life, and I'm delighted we're friends. I'm delighted we've kept buddy, and we've been able to word spar with each other so many times. And it's really beautiful to know you. I love you very much.
You too. Oh, bless you. Put a pause here and see you back for the next Earth Converse podcast. In the meantime, go out and enjoy Earth, one conversation at a time.